So I hope you have your Bruno Bicky ready to go. So let's get on with this review. Now I just want to say before we get right into this review, this was sent to me by Airgoo, which is part of Fengda. This was sent free of charge for the purpose of review, so all opinions will be of my own. And thanks for Airgoo for sending me this product to review. So what do we get? So of course, obviously we get the compressor, which has a reservoir tank, which is always good to have. Stores up a little bit of air, keeps us going without having to stop and waiting for the airbrush to give us some more compression to keep us going. It also comes with a fabric hose, which I'm quite pleased of, rather than the horrible vinyl hoses that we sometimes get. It's 1.8 meters, it's around about 6 foot with those to still use old money. We get a set of cleaning brushes, also some paints for testing, an airbrush holder, and of course we get the airbrush itself, which we'll jump straight in with. Okay, so let's have a look at the airbrush itself. So this is the Elite Airbrush Kit Pro, dual action. So it's FE-130. So as we get it out, it comes in a nice plastic case, carry case if you will. There we go, all nicely packaged in there. So we've got a little pipette, got a little spanner to remove the nozzle, the front, which I'll have a look at in a moment. So there we go, nice metal body, plastic tail, forget about the actual part of these, but I call them tails. So we've got a restrictor there, which restricts how far trigger will go, which is always good. I like these. It's quite, when you want to do some fine work, you can get to the right, the right sort of thickness of the lines, if you like, with that. So we've got the cup as well with the leads. I very rarely use these. I don't know why I should do, because these are quite good for actually keeping the paint in the cup when you're all over the place. So one of the things I like about these cups is they're nice and big. So if we want, do a long painting session with one colour, then we've got plenty of bowlage there to fill up. But also, what I like is that we've got a nice, big area. As you can see where the needle is there. We can get in there easier to clean up any sort of like residue or any leftover paint down there. So one of the things I like about these sort of styles of cup, because I just find them for cleaning a lot easier. So as we come to the front end, we've got our crown, which is standard sort of crown there. So if you want to, you can actually get sort of close in, and you can see where your needle is for tighter lines, so stuff like panel line and all that sort of stuff, pre-shaded. Personally, that's what I tend to do, but I tend to find you can get nice close up and tight lines with that. And then, as always, take that one off, and that leads us to our nozzle and needle. So that's what that little spanner's for, is to take that off. Now, I personally, with these, I just put them finger tight. I don't really tighten them with a spanner at all. They're good sometimes, because if you get a bit of paint within the thread, it is a little bit difficult, but I tend to just finger tighten them up, because the threads on these, in the past I found they do break, and they're a bit of a pain in the backside to get out. So yeah, finger tighten those. That's my little advice, there for that. So, but yeah, it's a nice brush. It's a nice weight. It's a 0.3 needle on this, so I think that's quite a good needle to cover pretty much almost everything, from base into, I wouldn't say fine work, but relatively fine work. It'd be great for, if you're doing pre-shading, particularly larger, I say aircraft, but particularly larger models. I personally think it's a nice sort of, it's a nice overall. It's like number 2 brush, covers everything, almost. So yeah, I think it's a nice brush. The only thing I do wish it had come with is a quick release connector, because all we have is a thread, then directly to our hose we connect. Now if for starters, I mean, it doesn't really matter because you're probably just going to be using the one brush pretty much all the time anyway. But quick connectors, they're really good if you start, increasing your airbrush stash. It's good to have a quick loose connector because you can just pop them off, change them out all the time. They are relatively cheap to get, but I think that's the only thing so far with this that I would have liked to have seen in there is just a quick loose connector clip. But again, for starters, you're mostly going to be using the one airbrush, so realistically that is fine, but personal preference is there. I mean, I've been doing it for a while, so I've got to try and remember with this that you guys that are probably watching this is going to be your first potential airbrush if you're looking at this, so sort of partly ignore that, but just for later down the line, quick release connectors are really handy when you have a selection of airbrushes for different things. So rather than just gabbling on about it, I'd actually sort of give you a little bit of a demo of the airbrush itself. First time I've used it straight away, so I didn't actually even really play with this. It was just straight out of the box, banged it in and stuck some of that testing paint in. And I've got to say, it works really nicely. The spray pattern is nice and tight. So, if you want to, I mean, I'm doing this relatively quickly. I'm not really taking much care, admittedly, with this, but if you take your time with it, you can get some really, really nice lines. You probably could even do some freehand camo if you want, if that's what you're going to be using it for. It's obviously not just for doing all this sort of stuff, So, yeah, it just gave a beautiful line. So the spray was nice and tight. Again, like I said, the closer you get in with the airbrush, you get a nice thin and tighter pattern of the spray. I also did it without the crown on. Now I did have a few tips with this, but this was actually down to me and not the airbrush. So at the time of filming this, it's extremely hot day. It's very warm in the workshop, and I was getting a lot of tip dry. So I'd added a little bit of water, lower the pressure slightly, just to sort of get the flow going a little bit better. So you will see some spidering, but as you see, as I get a little bit further through it, it becomes a lot smoother and a lot neater. But again, like I said, if you want to use this for sort of pre-shading or any little details, maybe some exhaust smoke, anything like that, honestly, it's like an all-rounder, this airbrush, especially for a beginner. It's like I said, it's like your number 2 paintbrush to cover pretty much everything as possible. So yeah, I was quite pleased with it. See me a bit clean off the tip dryer there. So like I says, it is pretty warm for England at this moment in time, but like I says, really nice. It's like a number 2 paintbrush, just pretty much covers all bases. Also did a proper paint test rather than just leaving you with some squiggly lines, just to show actually how well this airbrush sprays. And as I said before, it gives a nice pattern. It doesn't just splatter all over the place. As I'm using Tamiya acrylics for this test. I am using an old gash model, so this has been used 1,001 times, so it's not exactly the smoothest thing to be using. But as you can see here, taking your time, getting used to the airbrush, it does give a nice pattern. And I said it's very versatile. I mean, normally for a lot of these things I'll probably just mask this up, but I thought I'd show you a freehand version of it. And I said it's like I've said it before, it's like your number 2 paintbrush. It basically covers everything, so you can get a nice base pattern, base coating down, and then you can do your camo lines freehand if you wish to. But I said just to give you a better overview of the brush itself.
turret gunner and of course engineer, excellent gunnery skills and good technical skills. And he's got a Purple Heart Distinguished Service Cross, 2 of them in fact. And he hasn't missed many, in fact, if any. Yes, he maybe missed 1. Radio operator replacement, Robert Hatcher, below average gunnery, hasn't really had much to do.
Now the compressor itself, really nice, single cylinder, oilless. Basically, you don't have to maintain these type of compressors. They sort of just like look after themselves. Just be very careful of heat and overheating, because that's where you do start having problems. I did that with an old one and basically knackered it. But also with having the reservoir tank as well, this puts a lot less strain on the motor itself, so you can spray for quite a while before it feels like it needs to, you know, replenish the tank, and it just keeps. Of course, one of the things that we do like with our compressors is for them to be as quiet as possible. Now, I gotta admit, I think this one is a relatively quiet compressor, especially compared to my own. I think I was getting on a bit now, but I do think it's a lot quieter. Now, I'll switch it on. I'll try and talk over it because my microphone is literally only just here, so you can hear it. So that obviously that's sitting on the desk, so we get a bit more sort of noise from that, because it will just sort of like amplify it a little bit further. But I still think that's quite quiet. So what I'm going to do now, I've got the carpeted floor, so obviously it will change the sound of it a little bit. Even in your hand it sounds quieter. I'll just pop that down there. What do I think it's tangled up? There we go. So that's just on the floor, and to me, even that still sounds a little bit quiet, which is right next to me anyway, but I still think that's quite quiet. So I think for sound wise, for it, I think he's really, really good. Now, a lot of times, you know, you usually have to pay quite a bit more for the quieter compressors, which, to be fair, I think half the time are basically the same as all the other compressors. But I think that's really good sound. It's not too blary, or, you know what I mean? So I'm quite impressed with that. I think that's a nice, perfect sort of level for compressor. Setup is extremely simple. Take your hose, screw it into the air compressor. It's that simple. You'll also see there your pressure gauge, your pressure adjuster at the top, which also clicks into place to stop it from being knocked, and also your moisture trap at the bottom, because sometimes it will build up a bit of moisture. So there's a little valve at the bottom that you press and it releases any moisture that's in there. Alternatively, you can unscrew them and clean them out. Then again, it's attaching your airbrush and then switching it on. And with it all connected, switched on, you'll see your pressure gauge rise up. Again, like I said, you've got an adjuster. You don't need to have the pressure that high. Basically, I work on a case of just do what works best, but you do tend to find a lot of people will sort of say around about the 18 psi level. Now, there's nothing more annoying when you're halfway through a paint job and you need to stop for whatever reason, probably mainly for a cup of tea, and you find that you've got nowhere to put your airbrush down with paint in the cup. Now, like I said earlier, fortunately, Airgoo and Fengda put a nice little airbrush holder in the kit for you. So all you have to do is remove that little red collar, place the airbrush holder on, put the collar back into place, and you've got somewhere to store your airbrushes. So there you go, my friends, there's my review of the Fengda airbrush and compressor set. So at the moment of the time of this video being made, it retails out at £91.99, which is roughly around about £72, which in honesty I think is really good for the money. Now, I remember when I bought both my first two, well, my only two, they were about £100 plus. That was an airbrush and a compressor. So I think that's really good. I think the quality of it is really good. It's a lot better than the ones that I bought previously. So yeah, honestly, I'm really impressed with the whole thing. This is the compressor. It's nice, it's quiet, it's not overly loud. Again, because being brand new as well, it's not constantly going, as mine's a bit knackered, so it's going off a little bit more than usual, or as it should do. So, but again, with that tank being there as well, that means you know, you've still got enough air in there for long paint jobs before it needs to refill, and even then it doesn't affect it at all. You still get a nice good airflow through it. Like it says, it comes with a, I think I also read somewhere it says inks, but it says, you know, test the bottles. So I'm not sure what, I assume they're acrylic because they went down like acrylics and they seem very acrylic-y. But you know, depending on what paints you use, will need the right and relative thinners. Thinning ratios will vary between different colours. So something like black, you'll probably need a little bit thinner to it, but then when you've got green, you're going to probably need a little bit more because it's quite heavy in pigment. So I never do anything by specific measurements. Everything I do is kind of like by eye. It's something you kind of get used to after a while. They always say the consistency of milk depends on what milk, red top, white top, you know. So, but it's going to be something you're going to have to play with. You know, you'll get used to it in time. It just takes some practice, like everything, unfortunately. So it's not something that's always done, you know, the first time, unfortunately. But there we go. It's such as life, isn't it? So yeah. So I hope this video has been found useful to you. I want to say a massive thank you to Airgoo for sending me this to review. Like I said, I haven't paid for it. They're not paying me for it. And the stipulation I always have for doing reviews is, and I always say this to them, it says I will do it as long as I can say what I want. And they were quite happy with that. So, you know, there we go. So, yeah. I hope, again, I do genuinely hope it was useful to you guys. So, anyway, thanks ever so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you're new around here, I don't usually do a lot of stuff like this, but check out some of the other stuff. Do a lot of builds, a lot of weathering, all sorts of stuff. So go and check those out. Again, if you do enjoy it, like and subscribe. Subscribe anyway. If you don't like it later on, you can unsubscribe. Don't cost you anything, apart from a little bit of effort clicking your finger on the button. Anyway, guys, thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you again soon.